you've ever wondered who's responsible for cleaning up crime scenes or houses where people have died, and you're not squeamish, well, this next segment will be right up your alley. Natalie Pona has been investigating this very issue for a feature in Sunday's Sun. And Natalie, this is very fascinating. You spent some time with a well, what they call caretaker of death. What exactly does this guy do?
He's a crime scene cleaner, so he doesn't only do crime scenes, he does other scenes like things with biohazard contamination. But what I spoke to him about was his career cleaning up after the dead. He says he works for the Grim Reaper. He's quite the character.
Now, why on earth would he want to do this for a living?
He's a businessman. He went to university and studied business, and he saw there was a market for this. The average person, once they're stuck with some sort of tragedy, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to turn, and they don't want to be stuck cleaning up after the mess. So he's there, happy to do it.
So how much money could he be making?
Well, the job that I was on with him is one of his top 5 in terms of complexity, he says. The biggest, it's a month-long job. $25,000 for this month-long job. Typical jobs, though, $2,500 to $3,000, $5,000.
So who calls him up?
It's usually the estate's executor. Sometimes you get a real estate agent, somebody trying to sell a house if, God forbid, there's been a tragedy there.
And you spent a day with him. What was that like?
I actually spent a couple of days with him.
Oh.
It was fairly creepy. It was earlier this week and last week as well. I was on the job site, and I really got a good look at sort of the kind of work that he does and the strong stomach you need to do this kind of job. Although he's not a ghoul by any stretch of the imagination, he's a businessman, and it was a really interesting experience.
So tell us about the house that you went to.
Well, the house that I was in, there was it wasn't a crime scene per se, but it's what he calls unattended death. What happened was a woman who lived alone and had some mental health issues, died in January. She froze to death when her boiler gave out, and she slowly, sorry to be graphic here, but decomposed over the course of 6 months, and finally neighbors discovered her body because of the smell last month, finally. And he's been cleaning up after the mess ever since.
And we're actually looking, we just saw photos of the house. It's quite messy.
She was what I guess they call a pack rat, and that was a big part of his job. He's not Molly Maid to the dead by any stretch of the imagination, but that's part of his job. He'll do everything. He kind of makes it seem, or he tries to make it seem at least, like he's never been there, like there's never been a tragedy there, period.
But the caretaker of death thinks that this house is haunted, is that right?
Yeah, he seems to think so, and I have to admit it was really creepy just even being there. He's had all kinds of experiences with the lights turning on and off and strange noises, and he even had at one point left a tape recorder overnight inside the house, and he picked up some voices and some odd noises. So yeah, he seems to think that there's a reason for a haunting there. At least he seems to think there's some evidence for one.
Now, what kind of training do you have to receive to become a death caretaker?
Well, he's undergone a lot of hazardous materials training and other training, because he's working with body fluids. He's working with blood and urine and all sorts of other things that could be contaminated with viruses and diseases. So because of that, he understands, working with chemicals and working with decontamination agents and those sorts of things. Beyond that, there's a lot of basic kind of work, like carpet removal, that he knows how to do, that he I guess just through experience or through some training he knows. Things like steam cleaning, things that would just involve sort of basic cleaning tools that the average person doesn't think about, that you'd use bleach for. So that's the basic training that he has, and he's someone who also believes the industry isn't regulated enough here. He's pushing to have it, the government step in and make sure that people who do this job know what they're doing.
Well, Natalie, I can't tell you, we are so excited to read this feature. Thank you for telling us a little bit about it.
Thank you.
All right, and again, you can read Natalie's feature on the caretaker of death in Sunday's Toronto Sun.